In a fit of pique, Rick Pitino told a player, you can't play here, you might as well transfer at halftime of a game. Well, Tony Delk didn't leave Kentucky, and perhaps the lesson here is that it's not a new thing to be caught in the furnace blast of Pitino's vicious truth, his brutal honesty, and sometimes irrational insults, all aimed at getting the very best out of his team. It's as much a part of the Pitino playbook as the deflection chart. And deflection is probably an apt description, as some of the outlandish indignation that he aims at his team somehow wrapped in some self-loathing that once again was on display for St. John's this week.
This has been the most unenjoyable experience I've had since I've been coaching. We are so non-athletic that we can't guard anybody without fouling. I don't think they move well laterally. I don't think they're going to pick it up in the next week. They hear, but they don't listen. It's taken me a month to get them to throw bounce passes. Actually, 2 months to throw bounce passes. We just lack toughness.
My thought process was he never does anything that is not calculated.
Yeah, I've heard him tell me some like the craziest things that I've ever heard come out of someone's mouth. Out of love, he said he will chop me up in 7 pieces and send me back to Detroit or Houston or wherever the bleep I'm from.
Players who want to come maybe play for St. John's look at this and say, well, is this something I want to be a part of? And there are other options for them now.
It was not pretty, but St. John's survives on the road here in D.C.
These guys have never failed me. I have failed them with the fundamentals. I totally apologize to them for doing that. I wasn't ripping them. That wasn't my intent. But words matter. So I immediately went in the team and told them, I absolutely love you guys. I would never, ever want to embarrass you, but it's my bad. I'm at fault.
This is part of how he's been for a long time, and it's been wildly effective. But what'd you make of it?
Well, he said stuff he should have said in the locker room. He said it publicly. In the locker room, it's a lot different than when you say it publicly. And look, I mean, do I think there's a little bit of a contradiction for us in the media? We ask our subjects to be forthcoming with us. When they're forthcoming, then we say we don't like it. But what I would say to people who are critical of this or who think it's okay, wherever they are in the spectrum, ask yourself how you would feel about it if a player were in that press conference and said, well, we were up 19, but then Rick started coaching. Our second half adjustments were terrible. I mean, we have bad game plans, and we as players can't overcome that. We'd crush them for doing that. Yeah. And why is it different for coaches that recruited those guys to start talking about, well, they can't do this, they can't do that? It's one thing to say we aren't doing as good of a job, but it's another thing to call players out individually for shortcomings in sort of blaming them for the result. And also, I mean, it was kind of fun. I was kind of thinking when he said it's my most unenjoyable year. Well, what was second? Like, what was the most unenjoyable year before that? Look, Rick is great. He made a mistake here, and at least he apologized for it.
Look, unenjoyable. Losing sucks, and they were losing a lot, and that's just the way it is. But he brought those players in. When he was recruiting them, he thought they were good enough to help them rebuild St. John's basketball program. He passed on a bunch of guys that were on that roster that are having pretty good years. So I agree with you there, Jay. Like, you talk about Creighton, you're up 9. Marquette, you're up 15. Seton Hall, you're up 19. It is your job to help them find a way, and it's your accountability to help them find a way to win. But here's the bigger thing. See, I look at this as a bigger picture. You can do it in the locker room, you can do it in practice, you can do it in film. The bigger picture is when you recruit the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area, right? That is a very close-knit community. And that community is together. And this past week when this happened, I got more phone calls from the power brokers of New York metropolitan basketball, and they were not happy. And I call it in the room where it happens, like in Hamilton. When these good prospects are coming to a decision, they're in there with their grassroots coach, their high school coach, their advisor, maybe their workout guy, whoever it is. In that room, if you don't have those guys at least neutral, you have no shot. He lost the confidence and faith of some of the most important decision makers in the New York metropolitan area. And he's going to have to rebuild a bridge, or it is going to be really hard to get those guys. And you cannot win at St. John's unless you recruit the New York metropolitan area.
My issue was the athleticism piece. He was like, we can't move forward, we can't move laterally. You don't see that when you're bringing these guys into your program. That's something that you can see when you're bringing them in. That's not something you evaluate in the first place. So for him to say that, and then Jay, your point about the players not being in a position to defend themselves at all, because if they speak against the coaches, it's lights out. I don't think that's a fair position to put the players in. They're not even there to defend themselves, and even if they were, they can't speak out against the coach. So the power dynamic there of him saying that, I don't appreciate it.
It's a little bit, I mean, it's Rick, it's old school. It's, you know, now with NIL, and I ask myself constantly, what's the difference between pros and college? And it's like, okay, is college the minor leagues of the pros? Like when kids at the end of the year can say, well, you know what, I got this NIL deal. I got 15 points per season now. I want a new deal, or I'm going to go somewhere else. Like, you know, Steve Clifford, who's the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets, called his team under-talented. And he's like, you know, I'm going to tell them the truth. And I think sometimes the truth hurts. Was it a great PR move for Rick Pitino? Probably not. But I have zero problem with him saying this. Like, like he's, first off, he owned it. If you read the rest of the article, all the other things he said, he was like, you know, look, I have to recruit better. The way I recruited was differently. You have to win now in today's age.
Yeah, but he's got to recruit better, Jay. Well, I understand that. But basically, just saying I got to recruit better is saying it's their fault. It's not my fault.
He didn't say it was. But by the way,
he said you got to recruit better.
That's what he's implying.
But,
exactly.
Guys, multiple times Rick Pitino has said it's been on me. We're going to just excuse all the times he's had accountability for it?
Yes.
Now we're going to. No,
yes.
We're not. No, Jay, we always talk about looking at the full context of the picture. This was a mess up because Rick Pitino is one of the most competitive dudes out there.
Well, then why say it if you're taking account?
Because he's speaking his honest truth about it.
You don't think when he says it took them 2 months to learn a bounce pass, that's not a coaching issue?
It
you can't get your players to learn how to make a bounce pass. It takes them 2 months. That's a coaching issue.